many things I remember.
Let me go back just a bit. My father came to Martha's Vineyard from the British West Indies in the year 1901. There was a sea captain in Vineyard Haven. His name was Madison Edwards, and Madison Edwards used to sail between the Vineyard and Jamaica. And one of his trips, he became ill over there, and my father was a chaplain in a seaport area there. And when Captain Edwards became ill, my father assisted him. And his becoming ill brought he and my father together for a friendship that lasted many, many years. So Captain Edwards just about sold the vineyard to my father. I think you had to have a job before you could come to the United States. Captain Madison Edwards provided work for my father at the Seamen's Bethel in Vineyard Haven. Madison Edwards, who was they called him the chaplain, but he did everything. By that I mean, in days gone by, there was a lot of coastal shipping. And if a storm came up, a ship would come into the harbor, and Madison Edwards would take his little boat, go out and pick up the crew, bring them into shore, and give them cocoa and a religious service. A good combination. Then take them back to their ships after the service was over. Then after a while, my father became, they called him an evangelist at a mission called the Oakland Mission in Oak Bluffs on Masonic Avenue. And that particular mission was run by a Susan Bradley. What Miss Bradley did was to help all the Portuguese people that had come from Portugal to the island. They assisted them in becoming naturalized citizens. The Oakland Mission assisted them in learning to speak English and simple math. So this Oakland Mission taught them many of the essential things that they would have to know to get along on Martha's Vineyard. But I remember in particular reading the names of some of the youngsters. A good boy today needs prayer. It was interesting to see some of the people leading the town, and their name was in that book. The Alleys, the Amerals, the Sylvias, all listed in that book. I don't think that the Roman Catholic Church had focused their attention on the younger people or the immigrants. So they went to the Oakland Mission, as I said it was called. Then after Susan Bradley died in 1907, my father at the same location founded Bradley Memorial Church. He led that congregation, or that church, for 46 years. It was named the Bradley Memorial Church in honor of Susan Bradley, who founded the Oakland Mission. As far as I know, my father was the first minister of color on Martha's Vineyard. My father's name was Oscar Edwards Denniston. My mother's name was Medora Alberta, because Denniston. We used to kid her because that was M-A-D, mad, were her initials. I had two sisters that were born before I, Olive and Amy, and I was the third child. Behind me there was Baron and Gerald. When we were growing up, we lived in the same building on Masonic Avenue where the church services were held. One part of the house was the church with benches and a platform and an organ. It was not a space that we lived in. It was a space set aside for the particular purpose of worship, with benches and hymnals and an organ. My father was a bright man. He was a good father, a good parent. He helped a lot of people. He had a great heart. If you allow me to say it, he was 100 proof, which I guess I've said before, but that's not really a good term to apply to a clergy person. He was a well-respected man. He would help people regardless of their race or color. He was colorblind. I tell people today that, in my opinion, my father was way ahead of his times. Why do I say that? For he believed in attracting the best. In the summertime, he invited clergy people of renown to occupy the pulpit during the summertime. Each Sunday night, we had an evening service, and it was the custom to invite a visiting minister. One of the ministers that lived on the island for the summer or visited for a short period. For the most part, the people of color would go to the Bradley Memorial Church. We also had people of the white race. The Sunday evening service at Bradley Memorial Church, it started at 7:30 and probably went until 9 or 9:15. It was a place to meet on Sunday night. You must remember there wasn't too much social life. For a long time, there were not movies in Oak Bluffs on a Sunday night, so the place to go was the Sunday evening service. Many of the people that did come at that time, they were people that had come there to work and make a living during the summertime. And Sunday was always their day off, so they were able to go to the Sunday evening service. Then we also had the vacation people that would come and participate in the Sunday evening service. At one point, there was a gentleman that had a tour bus. And on Sunday evenings, he wasn't using his tour bus, so I think my father made arrangements with him. He would go to East Shop, Vineyard Haven, Edgartown, and pick up the people that were working there, bring them to service, wait around outside, then take them back after the service was over. And I think he made around $5 for that. But I thought it was quite an idea. The people were glad to have that service because, as you know, there is no public transportation on the Vineyard. And I don't remember taxis. There may be one or two taxis. And cars were very scarce. My father had his own choir. My sister always played the organ. My two brothers, I and my sister, we were the choir. So it was a company, so to speak. And there was a lady called Sarah Wentworth. She played mostly by ear. I don't think she'd ever had any training, but she did a fairly good job. But it was my two sisters that were in charge of the organ with bellows. You had to pump that baby to make her go. Sarah Wentworth. She was a mainstay. God bless her memory. I remember when she bought a car from an Up Island guy by the name of Mayu. And she was no youngster when she learned to drive a car. It was a Buick. And she saw another car coming, Lord help me, Lord help me. You'd be in the back seat, and she'd start praying if she saw a car approaching her in a narrow street. But she was an institution. I will never, ever forget her. We also had a Sunday school. After the Sunday morning service was over, there was a Sunday school for different ages. In the summertime, they put on a play. I can remember every summer we'd put on a play, and we'd have parties and picnics. These were mostly the children that came there for the summer. They were the larger part of the Sunday school. In the summertime, after many years of a small chapel on Masonic Avenue, there was an old building on Circuit Avenue, which had been a theater. It was called the Nopi Theater, and they showed pictures. Of course, there were not sound pictures in those days. There were a lot of blood and sweat. My father was able to purchase this old theater on Circuit Avenue, and that became Bradley Memorial Church. Memorial Day was the opening day, June, July, and August, and possibly one Sunday in September. There were many families that spent the summer in Oak Bluffs, and they left Labor Day. The show ended, so to speak, Labor Day. So you really didn't need the extra room on Circuit Avenue. Plus the fact that it was unheated. So you had to come back to Masonic Avenue shortly after Labor Day. But the island more or less came to a close after Labor Day. And that used to break my heart. All my summer friends went back to the city, which meant about 9 months of dull, just school and church, school and church. We would have a service, a midweek service on Wednesday and again on Friday, and I can remember those. The Denniston kids had to attend. Your homework came after that or before. And if you had a basketball game to be played on a Friday night, that Friday night prayer meeting could present a problem because you were expected to attend. It was a basketball team or prayer meeting. So my father told me I'd do errands, I'd work my way to the point I would get permission to go to the Friday night basketball game instead of going to the Friday night prayer meeting. But I went to the Wednesday and I went all day Sunday. So I got my religious training, thanks to my father's discipline. I used to enjoy the band concerts. They used to have, well, they still do have band concerts. 1 week Oak Bluffs, the next week Vineyard, Haven. The band's concert would go until 9:30, so I'd watch that clock in church and make it for the band concert afterwards. We never saw a silent movie in our lives. Never. If you can imagine that. Of course, there were silent movies at one time, and there were two men of color in Oak Bluffs. They would play the piano while the movies were being shown. I can remember hearing my friends talk about the Wild West pictures and how the guys would play the piano. But I never saw a silent movie. Yeah, I guess it was, we were the minister's children, and we were not supposed to go to the movies. I think that was a cardinal sin. No dancing, cards and dice and dancing. Thumbs down. I guess things have changed quite a bit since. There was a band that would come there every summer, orphanage band. They were called the Jenkins Band. Have you ever heard of Louis Armstrong? That's how he got his start, playing in the street with the Jenkins Band. The Jenkins Band, these were, as I understand it now, there were schools in some parts of the South, but they more or less had these children. They always used the word orphanage, Jenkins Orphanage Band. And what they did was, they taught these young people to play instruments. Wind instruments, percussion instruments. They would play in the street. They played on Circuit Avenue. They played near the wharf. And while they were playing, the others would pass the hat. When they came to Oblast, my father would help them by getting permits or whatever it was for them to play on Circuit Avenue. And he would have them to the outside of the church. I don't remember them coming in, but he did give them a hand. There was a place called, you know where the Methodist Tabernacle now is, of course. The Baptist Church also had a large tabernacle up in the Highlands. And they would have a production every night. I remember this particular night, my father tells me that he was embarrassed for this reason. The tabernacle, the Methodist tabernacle, the entrance is in the back. Most churches, most buildings, the entrance is to the rear. The Baptist tabernacle, the entrance was from the front. This particular night, my father said he might have been a few minutes late. Well, anyway, when he walked into the tabernacle, this particular person that was giving the lecture, he said, just as my father walked in, "The Negro is advancing," and he watched my father. He used to tell that and make us laugh. He said there was nothing for him to do but keep walking. The timing was perfect but imperfect. I remember at one time my father, this particular person who was a member of the school committee, passed away while in office. The other two members of the school committee elected my father to fill the temporary position. And they said, when voting comes up, you will have to run for that office if you want to stay in that position. And when the election came, my father took a terrible beating. It was said that if Mr. Denniston gets on the school committee, we'll have black school teachers. Can you imagine a black school teacher? Thank God I lived in long enough to see a black superintendent, and they've had quite a few outstanding black teachers. But that was the extent of the feeling. I guess you can call it ignorance. We will have black school teachers. God forbid. There was, for the most part, you found prejudice in Martha's Vineyard. It might have been up on the roof looking down. It might have been underneath a seat or hanging around the doorway. It might not have been in the front page or on the front line, but it was there. It definitely was there. There were certain jobs black people just did not get. Sort of unwritten. They didn't say, we won't hire them because of his color. But it just didn't happen. I can be specific. You didn't see black people working in the stores, the grocery stores. I got a little job, and my brothers and I, we got jobs in the A&P and McNeil's, but we were behind the scenes. We would, one of the first jobs I had was down in the basement trying to pick a chicken. I'll never forget that. I never did finish that one chicken. That ended my chicken picking career. I was no longer a chicken plucker or a chicken picker. But I didn't wait on customers. You did not have black people, black guys, dealing with the public. You could work in the back room. That's in Oakland. I've known people of color to make a reservation at a particular Oakland hotel, and when they got there, they said, oh, they didn't get the reservation. Yeah. But there are ways of letting you know you're not welcome. I remember the first time I got a haircut on 2nd Avenue. They used to pull the shades down after 6 o'clock. Then a man of color could get his haircut. God bless Mosquito, they opened that up. the Oakland school would give a play each year. Someone would come from off island with the play. They would produce a play, but people of color, I was never given a chance to apply for a part. So it was always lily white. The Girl Scouts were getting organized, and my sister Olive showed an interest in the Girl Scouts. Naturally, she wanted to join. And she was politely told it wasn't something for her. So people used to accept things that they wouldn't accept now. So we let it go. As you know, Washington, D.C. was a prejudiced city. People of my color, for many years, were not allowed to stay in the hotels or to go in the restaurants. So that meant that the senior class of the island schools would always go to Washington after they graduated or just before. I think they still do that. People of color stayed home because they knew they would be separated from their class. When it came my turn to go in 1931, I think I shook them up. I said, I am going to Washington with my class. So they said, okay, what the heck could they say? We raised the money together, I was a part of the class. So we started out from the Vineyard by car. Superintendent Martin and Barrows was the driver. So I did go to Washington, and by nighttime, I was separated from my class because I could not stay in the hotels with my classmates. So I had a nice room in the northwest section. It's where most of the people of color lived. In the daytime, I was with my classmates. But at nighttime, no. I'll never forget that. Oh, when I got to New York, Superintendent Martin said, now, Dean, you will have to go to Harlem. So I said, okay. And then I thought, I went back into his room, and he was in the shower. I knocked on the door. I said, Mr. Martin, we're in New York. This is the greatest city in the world. I'm not going to Harlem. I think that's the first time I ever really spoken for myself. And I get angry even now to think that that man was willing to send a 17-year-old boy up to Harlem, a place which he had never been to himself. So he said, okay. So they put a cot in the room with Becker and Robert Hughes. So the three of us stayed together. But I haven't quite forgiven him for trying to shuffle me off to to Harlem. They had a place called the Tivoli, and I don't think they danced on Sunday night, but Monday till Saturday, there was a dance hall with the real live music. We didn't dare try to get in. I've heard other blacks tell me that. But being ingenious, what they did was stay outside and listen to the music. I've even heard some of them say they danced outside in the, right behind the building. You can't go through your life moaning and groaning. You make the best. You grab the bull by the horn and you throw him. You don't ask the bull for his credentials. You say, come here, bull. And you do your best to overcome the bull. Sometimes you have to throw the bull. I can still throw a little bull, although there's no bull.